I'm Mike W., and this is World War II with Mike W., the history of the 95 Years' War. This episode is what I'm calling the State of the War Address. My intentions for this episode is to talk about where we have been and where we are going in this series. Just like when the President of the United States gives his or her State of the Union address. So let's get right to it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike W. Thank you. My fellow historians, we began this series with the Franco-Prussian War in 1870. France and their Emperor Napoleon III, fearing being surrounded by Prussian monarchies on both sides, in Spain, which I will review in a moment, in the west, and Prussia in the east, declared war on the German province, Prussia. This is directly related to the press in Prussia being manipulated and distorting the contents of the Ems telegram in short order. The Prussian armies defeat the French with the help of all the other German provinces. It was the catalyst for the creation of the German Empire, joining of all the German provinces into a great empire, including Poland and stretching all the way into the Ukraine. With the German Empire came Kaiser Wilhelm I as their king. He was followed by his son, German Crown Prince Frederick III, in 1888 for 99 days, and then followed by his son, Kaiser Wilhelm II. This guy had some real self-esteem and psychological issues that play a destructive role for mankind in the First World War. He would not have been in his position of power without the Franco-Prussian War. The result of the Franco-Prussian War was the Treaty of Frankfurt, agreed to by French and the German Empire, which punished France dearly for starting the war. This created hate and discontent in the French towards the Germans, both for their military loss and the harsh terms of the treaty. For the next 40 years, the French will wait for their opportunity to take revenge. They had to teach each generation to keep this hate and desire for revenge alive. It is not a good thing when a culture teaches their children to hate and seek revenge. People end up dying. During those 40 plus years, Spain goes through changes in its government and monarchy that may never have happened had the Prussian Leopold Stephen Karl Anand Gustav Eduard Telisto Fürst von Hohenzollern, or Leopold Prince of Hohenzollern, had been allowed to take the throne back in 1868 that is. Great German name. I believe the perceived weakness of Spain, due to the king, Alfonso XIII, being a child and his mother, Maria Christina of Austria, ruling in his stead, must have played a role in the United States being willing to declare war on Spain in 1898 in an attempt to liberate Cuba from Spanish colonialism, beginning the Spanish-American War. Mind you, the press at that time, controlled by Pulitzer and especially William Randolph Hearst, played a critical role in this war happening again. The results of this war put American troops in the Philippines, Guam, and Wake Island in the western Pacific Ocean as defenders of a new American territory, even though it was Filipino territory taken control of by the U.S. forces after they went there to liberate them from Spain. These troops would never have been anywhere near there without the Spanish-American War. 6 years later, a war breaks out between Japan and Russia over control of Manchuria and Korea and the warm water port of Port Arthur in Manchuria. Japan defeats Russia on both land and sea. This was the first time a European power had been defeated by anyone else on the planet. Well, since the Mongols, but that was nearly 300 years ago. Russia and their king Tsar Nicholas did not have any respect for the Japanese or Asian people and was unwilling to negotiate a compromise for dividing the territory before the war started. They paid dearly and are handily defeated by Japanese forces. As time goes on, Russians will have great respect for the military prowess of the Japanese. During all this time, all the European nations are ruled by monarchies, except France, whose monarchical rule ends with Napoleon III in 1870. They are all related to each other as well, as I explained in my video, The Royal Connection. These are all very old families that have been ruling for a very long time. Centuries, people. Clarity of thought in how things actually are globally in 1914 is nearly impossible for these people that are in charge of these nations. The desire for revenge, dreams of territorial conquest, a need to keep the status quo of power, the constant subduing of colonial cultures, as well as the Industrial Revolution having happened during these years, create a tinderbox ready to blow up. Weapons of war have become very destructive, but never tested in battle. Well, in Europe, that is. They were in Manchuria with Japan and Russia. Nothing learned here. From 1871 until 1914, the countries of Europe had not been at war with each other. Have, though, been arming themselves like crazy. New technologies of warfare, machine guns, manufactured in the thousands, dreadnought-class ships, which are obsolete by 1914 and replaced with modern battleships, breech-loading high rate of fire artillery with high explosive shells, submarines, even motorized vehicles and airplanes. 40 years of peace in Europe. Well, except in the Balkans, but the Austro-Hungarian Empire's got that handled, don't you worry. Every military technological advancement is copied and built by all the European nations. Tactics, however, how wars are to be fought on the battlefield, do not change at all. They still plan to bunch men together and advance en masse, just like in the Napoleonic Wars. Then it happens. What they've all dreamed of, a chance to use these new weapons, get revenge for perceived past wrongdoings, hate that has been taught. People can't hate other people unless they are taught by the previous generation that they must hate them. That little issue in the Balkans I just mentioned, well, that snowballs into what we call World War I, the war to end all wars, the most destructive war in the history of mankind up to that time. Sadly, we better it shortly. When this war ends, 18 million people are dead. Most of the monarchies in Europe are gone, or exist in non-governing positions. Well, except Spain. The king there has another decade. And there's the king in Italy, too. What replaces these old royal families is a new world where people feel empowered, have no experience in running a country. But they give it a try anyways. The results are wide-ranging. In Russia, the royal family is replaced by the Bolsheviks, who are communists. The royal family was shot and killed in cold blood by the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks are led by their bloodthirsty leader, Vladimir Lenin, and then Joseph Stalin. After Lenin dies, the Bolsheviks would never have come to power in Russia without World War I. During the war, the German army voluntarily transports Vladimir Lenin to Russia across German lines so that he would sow the seeds of revolution that would ensure that Russia got out of the war so that Germany could focus on defeating France. It worked like a charm, but they helped create a monster they could never have dreamed of, the Bolshevik-run Soviet Union. The results of World War I totally changed Europe. Each of the countries that lost the war, except Russia, had their own treaty with the victorious Allies. The Austro-Hungarian Empire is broken up by their treaty, the Treaty of Saint-Germain-en-Laye, with Austria, and the Treaty of Trianon with Hungary. This leaves Austria as a standalone country instead of a part of a larger empire. This is an important factor later on in the 95 Years' War. The treaty that made sure things continued on the path to war was the treaty negotiated with Germany, the Treaty of Versailles. Time for the French to get their revenge for the Treaty of Frankfurt I mentioned earlier. Now listen close. Things get complicated from here on. The Bolsheviks, or the communists, start their brutal and bloody reign of power in Russia at the end of their Russian Revolution, a direct result of World War I. The rest of the world lives in fear of anything similar happening in their nation. There is a fear by all other nations that the Bolsheviks might arrive at their doorstep. This fear is why Benito Mussolini comes to power in Italy with his form of fascism, backed by the Catholic Church. He arrests communists and anyone else who disagrees with him. Italy doesn't gain anything from their involvement in the war, which sows the seeds of resentment. Mussolini uses this to gain support. So fascist Italy is a direct result of World War I. The National Socialist Workers' Party is also established 45 days after the Treaty of Versailles goes into effect. They are also known as the Nazi Party, a direct result of World War I and the Treaty of Versailles. The economic boom that occurs in the United States during the 1920s is also a result of World War I. They have become a powerful export nation with the rest of the world needs rebuilding. The social changes that happen in Great Britain, France, and other European nations are also a direct result of World War I. The global economy, the connecting of the global banking systems is also a result. The United States is financing German war reparation payments to the French and Great Britain. Global trade is booming, except for the purposeful exclusion of Japan. Immigration from Japan to the United States was even cut off completely. They were allies during the war also. Then, the next event to ensure the continuation of the 95 Years' War happens: the worldwide economic collapse. precipitated by stock market crashes in both Great Britain and the United States. The causes of the banking worldwide crisis. A major effect of this is the cessation of funding for the war reparation payments by Germany. This creates a need for the German parliament to grant emergency powers to the leader of Germany, Paul von Hindenburg, at the time. Then, the National Socialist Party gained more and more seats in the German government. They use a campaign tactic blaming the people of Jewish descent and the communists for the economic troubles. Meanwhile, an incident occurs in Manchuria that is the reason for Japan to invade and set up a puppet government there. Manchuria also has resources and raw materials that Japan lacked. Economic factors there too. France begins to build a defensive structure between them and Germany to prevent another invasion. Since they have decided to evacuate their military from the Rhineland, they were occupying it as a stipulation of the Treaty of Versailles. In Russia, Joseph Stalin has been in control since 1928. After arresting and killing anyone standing in his way, he imposes collective farming on the Ukraine. Only about 1 million people are starved to death. Yay, communism! The economy has tanked in the United States to depths never before experienced. The struggle is severe, and the effects are far-ranging for the country. One positive result was the election of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, who started the New Deal for the American people. It was mostly ineffective to start with, but it gave people hope. About the same time that FDR was elected, so was Adolf Hitler in Germany. Completely different kinds of leaders, but also in a completely different country and completely different situation. This is a point in time where one good leader is voted in and one dark and evil leader is voted in at nearly the same time on this planet. Spain has another revolution, this one at the ballot box. They vote to do away with their monarchy and start anew with democracy and capitalism. It's just that the whole system needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. The differing factions are unwilling to work together for change, and it all starts to fall apart quickly. So here we are. 1933 has ended. Benito Mussolini is a fascist leader of Italy. They are dreaming of a new Roman Empire. The Japanese military is running amok in Manchuria. Unquestioned, their civilian government is powerless. Germany has a new leader, Adolf Hitler, the failed artist from Bavaria who became Führer. He has received dictatorial powers through a series of events which call for decrees and votes for the unquestioned power by the German people. The Soviet Union also has a leader that rules unquestionably, Joseph Stalin, a common criminal from Georgia. He has come to power at the coattails of Vladimir Lenin, but is far more brutal and vengeful to his former enemies. These two clowns would never have come to power had it not been for the tragedy of World War I and what followed. The United States, France, Great Britain are reeling under the strain of the worldwide economic collapse known as the Great Depression and can really do nothing but focus on domestic issues. Spain is descending into darkness due to the fact that they are unable to work together to rebuild their nation after voting their king out of office and decide to change how everything is done in their country. Things are in a bad place here on planet Earth at the end of 1933. Oh, and things get a whole lot worse. Thank you, Mike. In the next series of videos, I'm going to cover things year by year from January of 1934 through September of 1939. Each video will cover very important events that happen around the globe in rapid succession. Focus will be on Germany, Japan, the Soviet Union, and Italy. These countries focus on expanding their borders. The United States, Great Britain, and France hunker down and isolate themselves like turtles. I will cover the Spanish Civil War from 1936 to 1939 by itself. If things get a little complicated, and they will get complicated, I may break the years up into parts. We'll have to see. As always, please subscribe, like, comment, and share, and hit the notification bell. I'm also considering monetizing once I begin discussing the fighting phase of World War II. I work 3 jobs, and so my time is limited to work on the channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in 1934. The only thing we have to fear is not learning from history. We will learn these things from history and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. My fellow Americans, it is very important that we learn from history, or we just may end up, my fellow Americans, you may think it's just peanuts, but it's very important that we learn from history. People want to know if their historian's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. Well, I think it's very important that we learn from history. Because if we don't learn from history, there will be an evil